All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Angela, and so for Module 4 Diverse Youth, I am interviewing my next door neighbor, Kelly. I'm using names.
That's
Okay.
fine. Yeah, good.
Forgot to ask that. Okay.
You're fine.
So Miss Kelly has a wonderful family next door to me, and she has three boys. One who is an 8-year-old with Down syndrome. So I thought she would be an incredible source to ask, and this would be a really cool learning moment. I'm going to read some stuff today out of a really awesome book that I found this week. We actually have this in our professional collection at the library. It's called Including Families of Children with Special Needs. It's the revised edition. If you're going to be working with people in any shape, form, or fashion, please find this book. It is fantastic. I've read the whole thing. It's really a world of knowledge. Please get yourself a copy of this and read it. And without further ado, thank you for talking to me. I
You're
really
so
appreciate it.
welcome.
We have more friends joining us. So we're outside so we can be socially distant and not have our masks on and still be able to have a conversation so you guys can hear me. Hi, guys. Hello. Okay. So I'll bring Augie out later. We'll play. It'll be a thing. Okay. So in this book, on page 79, it says, we cannot undertake an effective assessment of our libraries without involving the community we wish to reach. Needs assessment are a traditional tool of library service, and our existing skills in this area can easily be extended to the disability community. I think it's important to garner information about the characteristics and needs of all children, and including children with disabilities and their families, to do experiments like this. So the first question I have is, can you tell me a little bit about your family and a little bit about Reese?
Absolutely. So we're a family of five. Reese is actually a twin. Reese is, like Angela said, an 8-year-old. He is in third grade in elementary school with his brothers. So some of the things with Down syndrome that Reese is more similar, I think, to typical children than what people actually think. He does have some sensory issues. He likes simplicity. Um, as far as like sensory issues, it's more trying to keep him engaged in activities and programs. Can be difficult when things aren't simplified. Um, but as far as doing what other kids do, he loves the same things that other kids love. He loves to socialize. He loves people. Um, but again,
He does love to socialize.
Oh my gosh, he definitely does. So I think, the things even at the library that are important, he loves the library. He loves to go there. He loves a lot of the programs at the library he's been to. But again, to keep them simplified is definitely helpful. And there's definitely sensory issues. And I think not just with him, but a lot of children with disabilities.
Absolutely, for sure. What biases, like stereotypes and misconceptions, do you find people have about children with Down syndrome, whether they be conscious or unconscious? And what do you wish maybe you could tell people, like all people, about this?
So I think the biggest thing is that a lot of people think with Down syndrome that they're sweet and happy all the time. They are sweet, but they also are very similar to typical children. They do have emotions, sometimes have a very difficult time expressing those because a lot of children with disabilities are either nonverbal or it's very hard to understand them. So, especially with peers, when peers can't understand them, a lot of times children with Down syndrome and probably children with just special needs get frustrated.
I was going to say that must be very frustrating.
Yes. So that's like the biggest one because they are, like I said, they do have emotions just like any other child has, but sometimes has a more difficult time expressing those. The other one is I think a lot of people are surprised at how high functioning they are. Children with Down syndrome, it just takes them longer to do things, but for the most part, they do exactly what typical children do, and they like exactly what typical children, age appropriate, like to do.
Right. All right. I know the answer to this question, but does your family use the library? What services do you use? What programs do you guys like to attend or not attend, and why or why not? And I'll ask the third part of this question after you're done that.
Okay. So yes, we love the library.
I knew that going into this.
I will tell you though, we used the library a lot more prior to them going into elementary school. There were a lot more programs. We did have a nanny that stayed with us during the day that was very involved in their lives and the programs that she took them to, and a lot of them were at the library. So I actually kind of reached out to her too, because she did more of that. But yeah, I mean, we obviously reserved books, prior to COVID, and now thanks to you.
And now that a librarian lives next door.
Perfect. It's like Christmas again. And when they are in the library, they love the iPads. So they love the iPads. It gives me a chance, being that I have two other boys, I can put Reese on an iPad and then kind of help the other boys.
And he's
find
learning.
books.
This is a learning iPad. We
Yes.
have like actual
Love it.
apps for learning and reading and literacy and math and things like that. This is not just go on the internet.
No, and actually, that being said, I love it because then I can see what programs he likes on those iPads that he doesn't have access to.
Oh, and then you can
all the
download them at
extra-
home.
And I can.
Because
So
they're
it's
all
been
free.
perfect.
Because
Yeah.
we didn't pay. They're all free apps.
So it's a learning experience for me too.
Very
but That's what I
cool.
love about it, and things that Reese can do independently, because there are some programs that he can, and they
Sure.
needs my help. So when he finds those at the library, we definitely download those at home.
Awesome. That's really cool to know.
Yeah, yes. So the programs that they participated in, I knew this one, but they all do summer reading. The summer reading programs. They attended Lapsit Storytime. That you guys had?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, which I went to some of these too, but they loved the magic show. You guys had somebody come in.
Probably
that
in the
did
summertime,
magic.
there was like a
Yes.
magic person.
Yes, and the balloon guy. They loved that too. Those were the ones that kind of stood out in my mind.
We get those guys to come in because we know it'll
Yeah,
draw the people in.
loved it.
Then we force books upon them.
Yeah.
It works.
It did.
And then what, if anything, holds you back from using the library or certain services and things?
The only thing I could think of is sometimes we've gone to the library and when it's overcrowded and there's a lot of people, it is absolutely too overstimulating for Reese. So unfortunately, it's a very quick trip to the library.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that means like programs that we know are going to be attended. Like, for example, New Year's Eve, we threw basically this big New Year's Eve party. So at 12 o'clock, we did a balloon drop and hundreds, like 700 people attended the library that day. There was noise, there was dancing going on, there was music, there was popping balloons. It would have been way too stimulating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is not something that we could attend, especially with kids. Like,
Got
yeah,
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Reese, I should say.
That's something I thought about when I planned that program.
Yeah.
So that's
yeah.
good to know.
Yep.
Let's see. I have another thing to read here out of my book. This is such a great book. I really love it. Okay. So traditionally, children with disabilities have been institutionalized, cared for by multiple professionals, or educated in special self-contained classes and schools, segregated from their peers without disabilities. This has often led to isolation and lack of connection to the informal support networks that exist within all communities. That said, what programs, services, or materials do you wish the library offered or could make adaptable for children with Down syndrome and their families?
Okay, so inclusion is a huge part of Reese's learning. He learns from his peers. So as far as behavior, how to interact with them, for him to be able to watch his peers do typical children do that, is what's so important about inclusion. That being said, the things that I came up with were like smaller class sizes. So when you do have programs and things like that, not necessarily gearing them towards children with disabilities, but just making them small, like saying they're going to be smaller class sizes.
We're only allowing, maybe registration closes at a certain point.
Yeah,
And
a smaller number. Because I know a lot of times when we would go to some of the programs, if Reese wasn't right in the front, he wasn't engaged in it.
got it.
So a smaller class
So
size.
qualitative over quantitative
Yeah.
programming.
Yes. So maybe shorter, like a shorter program, but offering more times for kids to go.
Sure. And
Would
not
be helpful.
necessarily what is it, like inclusive programs for all kids, but a much smaller scale for a certain number of kids to be able to come.
Yes. And then for like the story time, what is super helpful for Reese, I don't know if all children with disabilities are like that. He's very visual. So even with the online learning, it is so important for him to have, like if it's story time, his own book. So what we do
Oh.
is get the book ahead of time that's going to be read by the teacher, and we either get it from the library or we print it off. So I'll find it and we just print a copy. So he has his own that he can touch and feel,
Yeah,
and he's totally engaged with that. He loves that.
that's really
So
cool to
maybe in the
know.
story time, just make some copies of the books and give them to the kids when they come in, if they need it.
Interesting. I don't
Yeah.
even think in our sensory story times necessarily we provide books for all kids that come.
That's a huge thing.
So that
Yeah.
is really cool to know. I will
Yes.
pass that along because I feel like that would be really helpful for more than one. I mean, if you're saying it, more than one person's going to want that too.
Yes, that is super helpful.
Awesome.
And then the only other thing I could really think about, because again, it's very important for inclusion. I think it would kind of be nice if you did offer classes, like sensory classes, but maybe be more specific. So I was thinking, in my case, offering a class for children with Down syndrome. So maybe us parents could meet each other and know like more of the children in our community that have Down syndrome. So if you were to
To
do
be able
some,
to form a
Yes.
community amongst yourselves
Yes.
who are also library goers and
Yes.
can learn from one another and
Absolutely.
meet.
Yes.
That's very cool.
And then I was also thinking, because I know you offer like arts and crafts, that maybe, especially with children that have the special needs, is an
Yeah.
art and craft that's related to a book that you do. And I don't know if you already do
Okay.
that, but I was thinking like if it was a book about a bear that maybe like out of pom poms, like they make a bear. But keep in mind, some children with special needs have like they're not necessarily able to cut like a lot of OT things like that. So
Yep.
maybe it's already cut for them, and all they need to do is glue it. But
Or
give
certain
options.
sensory
Yes.
bothers certain
Yes.
people and to not include certain textures or something
Exactly.
like
Yeah,
that.
perfect. Or
Very
maybe they just
cool.
build a bear with construction paper.
We might be seeing a book craft coming out at a library near you. Who
Oh, that'd be
knows?
fantastic.
I might be in charge of those.
And then the last thing that I thought of too, I forgot about this one, is like helpers in these classrooms that do know how to work with children with special needs. Because a lot of times the parents sit in the back and they can't always be like up there and helping them. So it would be awesome. People that know how to work with children with special needs were in the classroom with us as well, like helping.
Right.
Or maybe even if they were in the class, then we could go with our other children out and like look for library books with the other kids too, which
Okay,
would
so
be helpful.
we're getting a sense of independence, but also
Yes.
being supported
Absolutely.
with someone who knows what's going on and how to do it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Perfect.
So that leads into like staff. I have a thing to read, but we're going to talk about staff and what librarians as staff members could do to maybe be trained up more. Like what librarians can do as people. So I'm going to read this little snippet real quick because I thought it was cool for you and the class. Librarians know more than they realize about meeting the needs of children with disabilities. Having a public service orientation and creating services for a wide variety of audiences are hallmarks of our daily work. As children's services specialists, we already design recreational and educational programs for children with a broad range of ages. Meeting the needs of individuals in a group has always been the norm. But that said, how can librarians as people be more accommodating and inclusive to Reese, to families with someone with Down syndrome? What can we do?
I think patience is huge. And also just understanding, not necessarily, so I'll give you an example. It's easier
Yeah,
to do that.
please do.
So they had at the library, they were foam, like blocks and things like that. So Reese would go to see those and not know, oh, let me just build something with it. Like he may throw them.
Yes.
But just to have patience with that. Like he's not doing it to be mean.
Malicious.
No, he's not.
Right.
He just needs to be told, like, patiently, That that's not what we do with the blocks here. Let me help you. Be helpful.
Right.
Because sometimes I think us as parents, like, not that we get offended, but
But like, who
it's
wants to be snapped at? Who wants to see
right,
their kids get snapped at?
right. Like help us if
Yeah.
they're not supposed to do that. Like be helpful. Just
Yeah.
help us out because some of us parents are busy, and like I said, I mean,
You
I
have
have 2 other
3
kids.
kids,
Yeah,
not just
and I'm
one
sure.
kid. And also, maybe you want to check out the adult books for 2 seconds and
Right.
be okay
Exactly
that
right.
the staff members are going to be helpful and not unhelpful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Helpful and patient.
Yeah.
That's it.
Very cool. So I have another quick. Oh, what else about library? What can libraries do other than patients, if anything you can think?
As far as like the librarians, that's what I thought of. The other thing, and I haven't had a chance to check out the sensory room. I really want to do that,
Oh yeah,
but I never got a chance to.
we have a whole room dedicated to like
Oh,
anybody with sensory needs. You have to be under 18, but so it's for youth with sensory needs. But
and sometimes it's hard because I know we didn't get a chance to because I didn't know that you had to like schedule a time.
yes,
So maybe limit the people like that. Maybe.
yep, it's like your family at a time. So it's like
Oh,
if
that's
just you
nice.
and Reese or Courtney and Reese or your whole family
Perfect.
unit wanted to go, it's only for like who you want to go at a time.
That is perfect because that was one of the things, like a space where we could go that's quiet. So maybe we grab some books. So that's perfect. And if all libraries don't have a sensory room, but a space
Sure.
where we could go where it's quiet and it's safe. Because a lot of times, kids want to feel safe. Sometimes that
Right.
negative behavior comes out because they don't feel safe. As in, like it's just too overstimulating. Not
So a space where you can go to be like, let's focus on what's going on right here and not have to deal with the 12 other things that are going on in the background.
exactly. And then where it's just simple, like simplicity. Because again, they can be overstimulated, and
Right.
overstimulation often leads to bad behavior. So,
Sure.
yeah.
And you often find that, right when you walk into the sensory room with a new family or whoever's going into the sensory room, you'll find that the kids immediately are like, "Ah," wrecking things, like just grabbing things and are overstimulated. And so the room is cool because it's designed to, don't like lights, turn all the light elements off. Like a lot of light and a lot of craziness, turn it all on. You want to focus on just the projector screen and do yoga, you can do that. Turn everything else off. You can make it dark, you can make it light. It's very adaptable. So, but it isn't a space where you can just have nothing. Those elements are still there on the wall and the bean bags and the rocking chairs and all of those items are still there. So you think maybe even a more simple space might be
I
helpful.
think it might be libraries too that don't have like that kind of space. Like
Yeah.
I think that's nice. Yeah, and maybe exactly maybe a space that is more simple. If you go and you didn't reserve the room,
Yeah.
then at least I can take them and they don't have the foam blocks and the things like that.
Just the
because
stimulation.
it is, and a lot of kids around because just more of just a quiet space.
Right. Okay.
But kind of speaking on that too is like alternate seating. I know you just said of bean bags, but I know especially at the tables, even just sitting to read a book, like alternate chairs. Like I know even just with the virtual learning, we have wood chairs that we're sitting on, and he can sit there for about 10 minutes, and then we have to then stand. So maybe even just places where they could stand and like read a book, like at a desk or a table. And then they also have like the balls with the feet on them, so like they can kind of rock in the chair. Like some of those.
Okay,
would be
so
nice.
get like just more sensory elements
Yes.
for seating wise
Yes.
instead of just a traditional chair. Have like a really cool. They
have
make a lot of. They make
stools.
cool
They
different
do.
stools and
They
things.
do. And then the balls are, I mean, they're very inexpensive, but then
Sure.
they have the stability legs kind of on the bottom of them.
Yes.
But then that way they can kind of rock back and
The
forth.
fidgeting
and-
can happen and
Yes.
it's not uncomfortable
Yes.
and shifting is more comfortable and
Absolutely.
okay, very cool. I like that. Well, so we've been talking about space, and I have a paragraph for that too. Okay, so assessing staff attitudes and competencies, understanding the characteristics that needs of children with disabilities and their families as patron groups, and training staff are some of the initial steps to consider before embarking on service development. Creating a welcoming space, a welcoming place is the goal of inclusionary practices when examining library readiness. So we've been talking about libraries as a place can be more inclusive. So like we were talking about the space, like the actual room itself, and accommodating seating and standing, and just those other elements. Can you think of any other elements as a space that would be helpful to Reese or to families with a child with Down syndrome?
I think that's kind of it, and always separating. So I know I can speak on the Abingdon Library, like foam, the foam blocks were
Yes.
right by the chairs where they could actually like lay back and read a book.
Yes.
But for a child with special needs, that's
Those
not
blocks are too
yeah,
close.
and so are the bags with the toys in them because we did actually utilize those a lot too, but they were too close. Like,
So having a space for reading.
yes,
It's
Yeah.
sort of a very the space. It's like it's all in here.
yes,
There's no this is the reading space and this is the play space. It's very much like
yes,
out there.
yes. That is what I would say would be super helpful.
That's probably helpful to all kids too. That's not like a very specific thing. It's like that's just a distraction and we're trying to read right now. But those blocks look awfully fun,
And
so
when you have boys, and yes,
Yep.
and the first thing you want to do is hit each other with it. And,
can
yes.
confirm. Yes, they do. All right. Next question. You don't have to have an answer for this, but I've read some stuff about partnerships and collaborations. Because librarians are librarians and we're not necessarily specialists or therapists, or we're not, all of us aren't trained to handle all situations. Are there any partnerships that you think that the library could make to enhance the library for someone with Down syndrome?
So I did think of a few. So there's an infant and toddlers program. You might already be in a partnership with them, but that's for children prior to going into elementary school. It's a program that where specialists come out to your house.
Mm-hmm.
So OT, PT, speech, and I think that would be a wonderful partnership.
Okay.
Also, here in Baltimore, there's the Chesapeake Down Syndrome Parents Group that I think would be wonderful to partner with. They've been a wealth of information for me. And then there's also the ARC.
The ARC, yes. The ARC we do partner with a little bit. I don't think specifically, so that might be something that we need to look into for specifics.
Yeah. I think that would be
awesome. Okay. What is the best thing the library is doing to accommodate Reese right now?
So,
I guess not during COVID. I guess like prior to COVID. Yeah.
Like,
right now, it's pretty much we're trying.
Yeah. So I think some of the programs that I've already mentioned. One that really stands out in my mind that all of my boys loved. So we're talking about at that point, because I think we did that like 2 years ago, was the superhero.
The superhero themed summer reading challenge.
They actually was a camp. Was it the camp where they had like an obstacle course for them, and
that may not have been when I was working there, but I think I
Okay.
know what you're talking about.
all of my boys loved it.
Yeah.
That was something that, definitely stood out in my mind. I mean, even just the reading that Courtney had taken, I mean, she did that every single week with
Wow.
Reese, and he loved it. And we met some friends in there too.
Oh,
So,
that's
like,
cool.
Yeah,
It's like that like
Yeah.
sense of community and making friends.
which was nice. Absolutely. And then the only other thing I could think of is just now that he's school age, and I know probably programs are hard to.
It's definitely different.
It is. So,
But in a perfect world, maybe we're open again and this pandemic is over. What would you suggest?
So, the only thing, and I'm not from Maryland, but we used to have where kind of like the summer program. So the summer reading, but it was during the school year, and you'd read so many books, and then you would get like a coupon for a pizza place.
Right.
Or I think some of those programs, especially because kids are so busy nowadays with sports and other extracurricular activities, but to keep them reading.
I think that what the summer reading challenge this year lacked greatly, I mean really, was incentive. There was literally zero incentive. It was like, read. Don't you want to read? And it was like we had very little time to turn it around. So we did well with what we had to work with,
Right.
but there wasn't that physical, there wasn't even like physically going and getting your bag full of goodies this year. There was nothing. There
Right.
wasn't. You couldn't even buy a T-shirt this year. There was no incentive at all.
Right. And I'll tell you, like my kids just love like the Ritas. I mean, I'm sure that wasn't,
Yeah.
but even something small like that, like I
Just
think
like,
is
oh man,
just
we're getting pizza tonight because we read 4 books.
Yeah.
That's huge.
I think so too.
Getting to pick a silly rubber duck toy out of a bin. Who knew
Huge.
that was the crux of
Right, to
summer
get
reading
kids
challenge?
reading.
Seriously,
Yeah.
it takes a
Especially,
sticker.
even kids with special needs would love something like
Yes,
that. Because
absolutely.
that's kind of how they do it in school too. Like they get tickets, like golden tickets
Yeah.
throughout the week, and then at the end of the week they get to pick something out of the treasure chest.
See,
So maybe even something similar.
So
to
simple.
That. And yeah.
and everyone was like, no, we can't do that. We can't do anything. I mean, of course they're like, we're playing it safe. We're just gonna do what we're gonna do this year. So
Right.
hopefully next year, if it's, I don't know what the future holds, but I feel like next year we'll have enough time to figure out how to run that program a little bit better,
Right.
because that incentive wasn't there.
Well, I'll tell you, you even mentioned, which I didn't know in the sensory room with yoga. Reese loves yoga. I think a lot
Really,
of
that's awesome.
loves it, and that's sometimes just how to calm him down too. So maybe even a library setting. Children with special needs, they to do something like that
Yeah.
and integrate it with, we're gonna read a book and then do yoga or
Yes. There are
something.
kids' books that they're like my favorite books to implement in story time. That are, I'll check them out for you. They are books that are the animal and then the animal pose. So like whale and then the whale pose.
Love
And
that.
yeah,
That
that's
would be so. I mean, I know especially for Reese, he'd love it. And they do that through the Chesapeake Down Syndrome Parents Group.
that's
So
cool.
they do it virtually, but they have a dance party that they love. So I mean, even something like that. They're doing that one night. They do yoga classes weekly with the kids now virtually, but those are things that they love, and get them.
That's that incentive to
Yeah.
keep coming back to the library to keep reading and things
Yes,
like that.
yes.
All right. And I guess this one you actually already mentioned, a lot of these things, but are there any good and bad memories that stick out in your mind about being at or dealing with the library that you kind of could be like, oh, what would have worked better in this area?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of them I've already mentioned, but I mean, the one that I remember doing with the kids is the superhero one, and maybe it's. Well, I think, I think the little girl down here did it too. I think it was something that all kids could kind of relate
Yeah.
to. Yeah, that's the
That
one.
was a good theme, and I know who was in charge of building that. So I will
Okay.
tell her,
Yes,
like,
my
her kids remember
loved
from
it.
years ago,
Yeah,
still
I
this wonderful
remember it.
thing.
Yeah, and they've asked about it. Like I think I can't remember what the last theme was, but when they say it, what was
Some of them are better than others. One of them was like about music. It was like rock something. That one was hard to connect. One of them was about space. That one
I
was
think
better.
they liked that one.
That
Yes,
one
they
was
did like
better.
that one.
It was
Yeah.
easier to connect the universe and books and
Yeah.
books about space, etc., to being fun.
Yeah.
Music was really difficult. This year it was going to be cool. It was stories. It was like classic kid stories, like Red Riding Hood, and tell your story. And it was going to be about reading and writing and telling your story and what story do you love, and characters, and it was going to be good.
One just
I
popped into
had a
my
bunch of
mind
cool stuff planned.
which Reese just loved. He just learned it like last week. It was all about emotion. It was a book that she had read, and it was about a bear, and then the bear was happy, and it talked about that for a minute, and then she's like, "Show us your happy face." And Reese he was totally engaged
Yeah.
in it because it was like reading a little bit, but then he had to do something.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that back and forth, which is nice too.
It had a nice connection
Yes.
to the material immediately
Absolutely.
in the program itself.
Yes, because attention span, I mean, at least for Reese, is about 15 minutes, and then you need to give him a break, and then he can come back to it.
Yeah.
But breaks are good. They are needed.
They sure are.
Yes.
They sure
Yeah.
are for everybody.
But yeah.
And on that note about breaking, thanks so much for watching my video, guys. I really learned a lot this week doing my research for this interview, and also learned a lot talking to you, Kelly. So thank you so much for helping me
Angela.
out.
You're so
I appreciate
welcome.
All right, bye.